So let's talk about smart home devices. You want to get a smart thingy that does something. It could be a thermostat, it could be a temperature sensor, it could be a door opener, it could be a reclining chair. So you must be able to said yes, but you've looked and there's lots of different ways and they all seem to communicate differently and it's a bit confusing. So I'm going to try and go through how things communicate and then have a little look at some of the devices. So let's start with the easy one, which is Wi-Fi. The good. It uses your existing Wi-Fi, so you don't need any extra stuff in your house apart from your new thing. Speed-wise, Wi-Fi is really fast, so you can have cameras and all sorts of things working over Wi-Fi. The bad. It uses your existing Wi-Fi. So if you don't have Wi-Fi one end of your house, you're not going to be able to put smart Wi-Fi things at that end of the house. You can overload your Wi-Fi. If you put all your cameras through your router all at the same time, your router might go, I can't do this. They are dreadful at power. Because they need to be on the Wi-Fi the whole time, they're drawing power all the time, which means anything that runs on batteries is going to run down really quickly and eat through its batteries. There isn't really a standard for Wi-Fi. They all communicate on 2.4 or 5 gigahertz, but how they do it is all different, depends what the company wants to do. So that's Wi-Fi. So if we move on to Zigbee. Now Zigbee is also like Wi-Fi, been around a long time. The good things about Zigbee, because it's been around a long time, is everything's quite cheap, so all the devices are cheap. They've got great battery life because Zigbee devices can report and then go to sleep for a bit and then report again. So it means their battery lasts a lot longer than Wi-Fi devices. They have their own network. It still talks over a Wi-Fi frequency, but they have their own mesh network. So it can kind of build up around your house and talk separate from your Wi-Fi. Your devices are actually part of your mesh. So you have two sorts of devices. You have end devices, which are things that are just on, and you have router devices that can pass messages. Router devices need to be powered, so things like Zigbee plugs can be router devices, and they can all be part of your mesh. It's got a bit of a standard. It's not perfect, but there is a Zigbee standard, but it's had addings added to it. My example is lots of places speak English, but we all use different words for things, which makes the standard not really work in English. Okay, we get onto the bad. You need a mesh network, and you need a mesh network that's kind of got all devices. So if you're trying to put something in the back end of your house that you've got no other devices in, it ain't going to work. It uses a coordinator to kind of coordinate things, funnily enough. If that fails, then your network fails. It has a standard, but it's not perfect, and like I said, people add their own bits to that standard. Speed, you don't get Zigbee cameras because it's just not fast enough. Z-Wave, or for Americans, Z-Wave, again, it's been around a long time. It's a mesh network again. It's got great power life because you can control when things switch on and off, so it only reports the temperature every 5 minutes. It works on a mesh network. Again, devices are part of the mesh. It's got a standard. Now this is where it differs from Zigbee. Its standard is rigorously enforced, which means that if something Z-Wave is plugged in, it's going to work. It will talk to everything else and be fine. Cost. Because of the standard, it's more expensive. The devices are more expensive because everything needs to be tested and ensured it works. It has a single coordinator. Yeah, for those people that want to write in the comments, it's not called a coordinator, but we'll call it a coordinator for now. It has different frequencies in different countries. So the frequency in Japan is different to the frequency in the UK, which means if you buy a device from AliExpress that's meant to go to Japan, it's not going to work for you. Speed, again, no cameras and things like that. It's not mission critical stuff. Okay, on to Bluetooth. Now Bluetooth has been around a while but keeps being updated. It's great for battery life. It's been designed to be good for battery life. It's got extra things like positioning, so you can use positioning so where you are in a room. It's got very bad range because it's designed to be within 5 meters, so probably about the same in a room. It also suffers from interference, and lots of devices make it slow. I don't know whether you know, you try to connect your phone to your Bluetooth on the stereo in the car, and it takes a long time. So finally, the new one, Thread. Now Thread has only been out 6 years now. So Thread is new. It's got no single points of failure. It's IP addressable. It has good battery life. It uses a great mesh network. You set it up and it just works. It's a standard. Again, it's a rigorous standard that has to be enforced. It's still new. It's still being added to and still having things added to it. It's a standard, so guess what? It's going to cost them more. It's still in its infancy, but it's going the right way. So let's talk about smart home Wi-Fi devices. So we'll start off with local devices. No, they're not local, that kind of local. Smart local devices. Well, they're devices that work when your internet isn't working. They're local to you and they work. So local devices, to name a few: Tasmota, ESPHome, Matter devices that support Wi-Fi, will all work when your internet isn't working. Wi-Fi remote devices, they're devices that don't work when your internet isn't working. So things like Toya and Meros and Amazon and things like that go to their servers to work. Okay, for those in the comments, I'll add this. Some remote devices can be made local. So there's a thing in Home Assistant that's called Toya Local. And what that does is talk to the devices directly. They all need to be set up in the cloud, but it can work both ways. Okay, Zigbee devices. Local or not local, that is the question. Whether it's humble, no, that's a different quote. So if you're using MQTT to Zigbee, MQTT to Zigbee, or ZHA, which are available in Home Assistant, they're local. They provide a reasonable support of most devices. Some you need, but you need to look them up to start off with. Then going the other way is Toya does a hub. I think Meros does a hub. Akora does a hub. They're all different kinds of hubs. They normally only support their own type of devices, so you can't plug everything in. Some seem to be local and some are not. It depends how they are. So you're now thinking to yourself, well, why don't we just use MQTT and ZHA all the time? And it comes to that pronunciation thing again, where MQTT to Zigbee hasn't got the full information on a device. It needs to be written, so somebody has to actually write that setting up. And in the Toya device, they created the device, so it's going to work first time. I'll give you an example. I've got one of these, which is a really nice Zigbee temperature and humidity sensor that quite happily sits on the fridge. So I set it up, put it on the fridge, and it was working quite happily. But every now and again it would do weird and wonderful beeps. And what was causing that? And it's because in the Toya setup, and actually set up on the device, if humidity goes over a certain amount or temperature goes below a certain amount, it beeps at you. That's all set up if you connect it using the Toya Zigbee device, but in the MQTT one it knows nothing about it. And most of the time you don't notice, you just need to put it somewhere where it's cold or it's hot. So Zigbee makes sense, but you need to make sure it's supported and does what you want it to do. They're the new kid on the block. No, not those new kids on the box. They've been around. They work off Thread or Wi-Fi. So we mentioned Thread before. They're reasonably good. They'll talk to lots of different things, and they're kind of designed so they can work everywhere. But I'm going to censor this bit. They could be said that they've been created so smart home manufacturers can charge you more money. We'll start again. Instead of fixing Zigbee or whatever's there, we'll start something new and make something new and exciting that we can charge you more money for. That's kind of a personal view on matter. I can see it working eventually, but it's going to take a few years. Finally, the wrap up. I think I've covered everything. It's really, whenever you want a device, you need to look around and work out where you're going. Does working locally matter? And it's one of those things that doesn't matter until you switch your internet off, and then you realise that you can't switch the telly on anymore, or you can't turn the heating up. You need to make sure what's going on. Now, I'm going to create a video about what's important in a smart home. Look out for that one. But that's all for now. Let's wrap this